Hey, my name is Grace, and this is my Nurse as a Team Member Final Reflection project. So, the first test that I took for this project was the Enneagram. This test allowed me to learn about my personality, and the core of this test is to learn about your internal motivations and how they influence how you act and how you think. And your internal motivations are based off of your childhood and how you grew up and what you went through in your childhood. So, very interesting test. I felt like it made me more self-aware, and I now know my friends' types, so it allowed me to understand like why they feel the way that they feel, why they do the things that they do. Excuse me, sorry. Um, and I just think it's really beneficial when working on a healthcare team, or even just maintaining friendships. I think it's a good way to understand where someone is coming from and why they're doing the things that they do. So when I took the test, I found out that I am a type 9, which is a peacemaker. And the core motivation of the type 9 is to maintain internal and external harmony and to avoid conflict, which in turn means their core fear is creating conflict. And um, I actually did know this about myself. I am actually very into the Enneagram. I think it's super interesting and very relatable. So I knew that I avoided conflict, but prior to taking the test, I didn't realize how much avoiding conflict influenced my life and how I do it all the time in friendships, and just in life in general. And I think as recognizing that I do this has made it so I don't avoid it all the time, because avoiding conflict, like I mentioned in the traits, it can make nines come across as passive aggressive because they don't really confront conflict directly. They just will internalize it, which can mean that they can be stubborn, usually quietly stubborn, um, and passive aggressive. Some other more positive traits, they're usually pretty calm and stable emotionally, at least on the outside. Not always on the inside, of course, but they're usually a mediator of friend groups. I know that's so true for me. I'm usually the one stuck in the middle because I'm not really creating conflict, but I'm always there for my friends. So usually in the middle, which can be sort of an awkward position sometimes, but it happens frequently. They usually have a wide circle of acquaintances because they're typically pretty friendly and non-judgmental, optimistic, and supportive. So this can be both beneficial and harmful in interpersonal relationships. So I think it can be beneficial because I'm able to resolve conflicts well because I just want to get it over with and I don't want to deal with conflict. It stresses me out. I think nines are also really good at connecting other people and bringing people together, because they are usually non-judgmental and friendly. But this can also be harmful. They can create more conflict by being passive aggressive because avoiding conflict isn't solving the conflict. So that can in turn create more conflict, and it can sort of be this cycle. Um, and so for nursing specifically, I know this is true for me, and this is really common when I was reading test results that nines often struggle with managing time. They can get caught up in tasks that aren't as important because they sort of just live in the moment, live in the present. They're not always thinking about what has to get done all the time. And I know that's true for me, and I've definitely improved on this since nursing school. I don't really feel that I do this anymore. I feel like I've gotten way better. But I know younger me, less mature me, was not great at managing her time. This can also be beneficial though. They work well with other team members because they are pretty friendly and calm and go with the flow. And yeah, they're caring and friendly, which is great when interacting with patients. The next test that I took was the Myers Briggs test, and I really liked this test. It taught me about my strengths and weaknesses, how I act around other people and in relationships, how I manage stress, what I value, how I collaborate with others, really just my personality as a whole. It was really eye opening. So I'm an INFP, which stands for, I have it on the side in that graphic, introverted, intuitive, feeling, and perceiving. So they're usually called the mediator, which makes sense given that I'm a 9 too. They're open-minded, imaginative, caring, creative, generous. They can be self-isolating in stress, which I know this is very true for me. I'm usually one of the first people to help my friends if they're struggling, but for me, it's hard to accept help, and I'd rather just be alone when I'm stressed, which um, is not always a great coping mechanism. But they can be emotionally vulnerable, sometimes to a fault. Sometimes they'll take on other people's emotions, and um, they feel very strongly. Um, they're people pleasers again, sometimes to a fault. They can neglect their own needs to meet other people's. So I know that I used to struggle with this, and I still do. They can also be very self-critical, which I know that's true about me, um, and that can just impact their self-esteem. And then I thought this was interesting. These are some famous INFPs: Princess Diana, and apparently Luke Skywalker is an INFP. So, for interpersonal relationships, this can be beneficial because they're usually caring and compassionate. They're typically very good at reading emotions. I feel like this is true for me. I can usually tell instantly if someone I love feels off, or honestly, anyone, like a patient, I can tell if they're feeling off. Um, yeah, they're usually good at reading emotions. They're willing to go along with others, sometimes to a fault, like I mentioned before. And again, yeah, they'll isolate if stressed. So this can, um, if if an INFP is stressed all the time, they can become very isolated, which can impact relationships. So there's good and bad. For nursing specifically, the high emotional intelligence is very beneficial. Obviously, patients are very stressed in the hospital, so it's really beneficial to be able to recognize that, or recognize if they're slightly off. And they're harmonious, so they can bring people together, which is good when on a healthcare team. So next I took the emotional intelligence test. It allowed me to recognize, or it allowed me to understand how well I'm able to recognize others' emotions as well as my own. And I liked it. It was easy, short. Uh, it gave me numerical score, which was easy to understand. So these were my scores. So for self-awareness, I got a 5 out of 10, which was lower than I thought. But after thinking about it, it does make sense to me. I think I'm really good at reading other people's emotions, but can tend to get lost in my own and sort of neglect my own feelings to maintain other people's emotions. So yeah, I was surprised that I got that low though. And then self management, I got a 10 out of 10, which was interesting given that I got a 5 out of 10 on self awareness. But, um, and then social awareness, 10 out of 10, relationship management, 9 out of 10. And I don't know if I would necessarily agree with this. I don't know. I don't think anyone is really perfect at any of these. So I was surprised that I got 10 out of 10. I don't feel like that's true because I think everyone has an off day, and I don't think anyone is perfect at maintaining relationships or being aware of other people's emotions. So anyway, um, for interpersonal relationships, since I'm not as good at recognizing my own emotions, this can affect my actions and words. For example, if I don't recognize that I'm angry and I say something I regret, I mean, that could impact a relationship for sure. So, yeah, I could just create conflict, which is interesting because I'm a 9 and I hate conflict. So, that's something I need to work on. I think I can work on that by just taking a step back whenever I feel sort of off and just processing how I feel. For nursing specifically, I'm really good at being able to recognize patients' needs, and that can improve relationship building with staff and patients. So next I took the Kilman conflict mode test, and this is important because conflict is inevitable, and it really just shows you how you deal with it, and um, this can allow you to improve in conflict resolution skills. So my main conflict modes, I got 3, which I was surprised. So I got cooperative, compromising, and avoiding. So I guess I switch in between the 3 depending on the situation. So they gave me this formula, which basically for situation A, if I'm uh, cooperating fully and half construct. Anyway, you can look at it, but it's just interesting because it gives me different situations where in the first one I have a chance to win the conflict. If it's the second one, my opponent has a chance to win. So I thought that was interesting. They did that, and I was surprised that I had so many types. I took this as depending on my mood or my opponent's personality or conflict style, I guess I can tap into different styles, which I think can be beneficial, but also I think avoiding it is not beneficial. So, yeah. So, for interpersonal relationships, I've mentioned this before, avoiding conflict can actually create more conflict and leave things unsaid. So, I guess that's part of my conflict resolution style. So, I need to work on confronting it or compromising. And yeah, I guess I can compromise well with others, which is beneficial. For nursing, I might struggle with advocating for my patients if in a tough circumstance, and if I tap into that avoidance conflict resolution style. So I just need to be aware that I have a tendency to do that and to push myself to be more assertive and advocate for my patient because they're the most important thing. So the last one that I took was the team role test, and I think it's really good to know where you fit in on a team given your strengths and your weaknesses. And I liked this test because it shows that one role is not better than the other. I think we all just have different strengths and weaknesses, and we all fit into these roles. And yeah, we're all unique. So I liked this test. So my top three were my highest one was team player. And the team player fosters harmony, avoids conflict, they're caring and helpful. So that goes along with the other personality, especially the Enneagram 9 and the INFP. So that didn't surprise me. That was my top one. The next one was the chairperson. They're the coordinator. They also foster harmony and they're communicative and respectful. And that one didn't surprise me either because I think I tend to fluctuate between the team player and the chairperson depending on other people's personalities and how the group works. I think I can take over as a leader and be that chairperson and the person coordinating and like giving out different roles. So I thought that was interesting because I think that's definitely true. I recognize that I do that. And the completer, they feel responsible for a team's achievements. They're usually in charge of quality control. They can be controlling in some circumstances. And I was surprised that I got this one. I feel like in certain situations I can be more controlling. I wouldn't say it's as direct as some people. I think it's sort of like a quiet control, but I do like to be in control because I do often feel responsible for how much a team achieves. So yeah, I would say I was not surprised when reading this because we've done a lot of group projects this semester, and I think it's very true, and I've seen these in real life. So yeah, for interpersonal relationships, the coordinator is good at making plans when needed, which is true. I've done this in many of my group projects. I value respect from others, which I think is important, and then I'm willing to help. So that can be very beneficial. Nursing application, quality control, that's extremely beneficial because we're giving medications and we're performing procedures and we're very busy, and so you need to have that quality control so you don't make mistakes. So that I need to make sure that I apply that when a nurse. And then I can be controlling in times of high stress. I wouldn't say that I'm always controlling, not at all, given my personality, and I sort of am like that mediator. But I have noticed that in times of stress, I will become controlling. So I just need to be aware of that and just recognize that when I do that, it's not always appropriate. So depending on the situation. And then for the conclusion, I think these tests apply to the whole pyramid. Obviously, we're talking about the RN, which is me, but given my personality, it affects how I work on a team, and that affects, the work of the team affects the unit department, and I think it keeps going on and on. At the end of the day, my personality is a small part of contributing to the healthcare industry and society as a whole. So I think it really ties into all of these different aspects of the pyramid. And yeah, so the rest of the conclusion, I felt like my results were very consistent, which means that I'm pretty self-aware, I feel like. I'm peaceful, I'm a mediator, a team player, I'm caring, harmonious, and passionate. And things that I can improve on: the stubbornness, passive aggressiveness, and tendency to avoid conflict. So yeah, thank you for watching.